Hello, welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to finish off a stamp sketch that I started, well, that I did, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And I was thinking about adding... Okay, so what it is this. I was testing the fences like this, and I really like this configuration on a cliff overlooking this body of water. Now, one of the things about this in terms of scale is that I could put like a bird or something like that on this island out here, and then it would suddenly become just a little rock or something like that in a near shoreline. But I think I'm going to add this little tiny sailboat here, right in here, and that changes the scale of these islands out here in terms of the relationship with an object out in the distance, okay? So that's one of those things I read years ago. It's like, why put people into landscape, settings and things like that, photography. I guess the kind of the joke is that landscape photographers always put someone in a red vest in their landscape photography because it gave scale and perspective to the scene that you were looking at. When you have something man-made within a given space, we know what size a tree is, a mountain is, or in this case, an island, okay? All right, so if I add this in here, I'll probably add it right around down here, and then this would change the scale of this overlook here, saying that it's really quite high, and this is really quite distant down here. Not super distant, but this is the smallest little boat that I have. I could have it, I don't know, somewhere right in here, maybe. I mean, this could also be like an RC, which is a radio-controlled boat too, but, I don't think people are going to think that when they see it. Okay, now I have stamped this out quite a while ago, and so that I don't have to wait for these to dry before I start adding in some color, I'm going to add in my subject matter, my person overlooking this area and the sailboat after I stamp everything out, or color everything, okay? So I thought I would try something. Being that I'm doing this too, I'm going to try something different in here. My ripped paper towel technique, I typically use on darker surfaces like foils and whatnot. But I'm going to try that on a colored background. So I'll establish a colored background in here, and I'll add the white pigmenting clouds in afterwards, okay? So I'm going to do a fairly simplistic treatment of this scene, and then we'll establish some other types of test techniques in here afterwards, okay? All right, so I've talked about this before, but one of the techniques that I learned in beginning oil painting or beginning painting classes was to lay down on our canvas and gessoed, canvases, laying down a light, warm tone, be it with sepia or, let's see, what were the other basic colors that we used? Sepia, and it wasn't walnut. I'm trying to remember the names of some of those colors that we used to use. Oh, umber. Burnt umber. Umber and burnt umber. There were just some basic tones that you can lay down on things, no matter what the temperature scheme that you were going to do. You can do a winter scene and it's all in blues, but if you had kind of a little bit of a warm base to it, I don't know, it just changed the spirit of it. It looked more full. Okay, now I'm not going to add this in the sky. I could, but I'm not going to, okay? So here's what I'm doing here. The rocks on the side, I have various amounts of this antique linen in this case, okay? So you can see I have it kind of light and dark in some areas. Now this is a light color, but I'm just saying I've applied it in some areas, but I've left some areas just light. But now that I look at that, I don't know, it's light, and I think I am going to add some of this into the water down here. we'll add a lot of blues over the top of it, so I don't know if you'll be able to recognize visually the color of this in here, because it'll be more blue, but I think it'll have a little bit of a warm kind of a, I don't know, tinge to it. Okay. So adding this down, what I'm doing is I'm kind of establishing what I want this to look like from a lighting perspective. And it's good to do that with your lightest colors too, in this case. Okay, and why I say that because when you start off with a light tone like this, you're not making a big commitment to any given hue or value scheme or anything like that, okay? It's just a very light touch, so you can establish the lights and darks. Okay, so you see it kind of in the shadows here. I'll have this backlit in here where the lighting is coming from the sky and glowing on the water. So I have this little area in here lighter. Okay, so maybe I'll have this, I don't know, this could be however, but you kind of have that lighting coming down the center of your body of water. And that means that you just don't color everything out. If you color the whole thing, you're coloring, okay? If you leave some areas light, you're coloring and lighting at the same time, okay? So lighting doesn't have to be some kind of mysterious thing. People are used to seeing whole things as something to color in, like they've gotten used to doing like coloring book styles of applications of color, which you do for outline designs typically, okay? But in order to represent light, what you're doing is you're just retaining some areas of light as you work through your value scheme. So as we move into other colors, it's just important to remember to retain some of those lighter areas by not coloring it out. And sometimes people have a hard time putting on the brakes if they haven't done this, you know, kind of general technique before. Okay, so let's add some of this to our sky. We have a lot of area. I wasn't going to do this warmth, but I thought that looks pretty good. And it's also very light, so sometimes I forget what this looks like. Just kind of lightly applied. Or even thickly applied. It's just light, you know, so like I said, it's not like some kind of big commitment. Okay, now here's what I'm having to do on this one because it's kind of an experiment for me. I'm used to adding a certain amount up in my sky, but I'm going to need to do that sponged cotton ball type of application of clouds up there. So I might have to take it a little bit darker than I normally would, you know, just so that we can see some of those white ink applications to create those clouds up there, okay? Okay, so I'm kind of going against my, habits right here. Okay, and just making it a lot darker than normal. Or than I don't know, than I would normally. Okay, so see that right there? See how we've kind of established a little bit of lighting in here? It just simply means that I've retained some areas of light, so right around in here, and a little throughout that, and you can see these rocks aren't all evenly applied. All right, so again, I mean, it's for a purpose right here, but also you can look at it as really taking everyone, it takes us all off the hook of having to do things perfectly even or smooth. I don't know, maybe that's not the thing. I mean, we're going for kind of a smooth application, but it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? A lot of times people get on this and like they add one color and it's like, oh my god, it doesn't look like, you know, mine don't look like a finished piece at this point in time. And it doesn't have to be like, oh my god, that is so perfect with every single application, you know, as it goes. It's not supposed to look like a finished piece. It's like if you I don't know. If you do one loop on tying her shoes, it's not like the finished, thing. Bad analogy, but that happens a lot. And I get it, though, too, because, see, if you're coloring something with a pen, it's like, okay, that little area, the dress on this little figure is red, okay? You're not kind of layering layer over layer over layer over layer, okay? Most people are used to looking at kind of side-by-side comparisons of media, all right? And they're not thinking about it being kind of built up from, I don't know, you can consider it like a base area, you think of primer or something like that, or if someone's glazing wood or something like that, it's kind of more of a build-up vertically as opposed to a side-by-side application of some kind of color scheme. So it's not always apparent. Now, if you do this like one or two times, you get it, but it's in people's first times. They think they've made a mistake because it doesn't look like a finished piece, after one color or something like that. They're saying, well, wait a minute, I saw the end result posted, and it doesn't look like that after their first color. So just give it some time, okay? All right, so adding this in, you notice I'm adding some of this blue. I mean, I add it to my water and my sky, that makes sense, but I'm adding it to my grassy area here. Blue is a component of green, right? So you can add that into anything that you're going to have as green, and what that'll do is it'll give it continuity between this area and all the other areas in here by having a common, very light color. This is a very light color right here, summer sky. Super light, okay? So, again, it's a very light tone, and we're starting light, and we're just building it up, okay? Here's a Bahama blue right here, okay? It's just kind of my next color that I happen to have that's very light, okay? Now watch here too. This is going to make your life so much easier when doing this type of color application, okay? See this how I'm adding it in, but watch how I'm staying in that one area, and I'm seeing how I just keep developing it. I'm kind of developing this streak going across in here, and I'm starting from the outside edge, and I'm working my way in. Look at this. I'm even removing ink by just touching it right here. That really surprises me that that ink is so surface-oriented. I'm working on a paper called Mohawk Everyday Digital White Coated Silk. So it's a coated paper. It's not glossy. It looks much more matte, but it does have a coating on there that gives it kind of a, it has a little bit of a sheen to it, okay? But it's not so smooth like a glossy, where it won't accept dry media. Now, it's not going to do a great job with dry media like pastels and chalks and colored pencils, okay? But it can take a little bit of it, and I plan on using some colored pencils on here. Okay, so that is the sky there. I am going to create a little bit of a mask, I can think of the word, for my water. This will be the easiest masking you'll ever do. Just taking a piece of paper like this, okay? And I'm adding this right into my water. I'm kind of adding it at the base of the islands here, making them look a little bit, or somewhat backlit by having that shadow down there, okay? And I'm hitting the horizon a little bit too. That's the way kind of the horizons look a lot of times with that lighting. See like that? And look at how it differentiated surface from sky like that. Okay? All right. Just keep adding in. At this point in time, we're starting to lose some of the antique linen visibility, but it is influencing what you see, because dye-based inks are transparent. I mean, you can see a lot of it in here still, but let's see. I think this blue is light enough, or dry enough on the sponge here, where I can add it into my grassy area. I'll add some greens and whatnot up here in this little overlook here. It's not supposed to, I don't know, this is a little overlook here, so it stands to reason that it would be somewhat kind of trampled and not like super, filled with grass or something like that, but we'll see. We'll add some of this down. I'm starting to like this cloud area up here, like just even without any kind of white pigmenting, but I do want to test that out, so I am adding in more blue right in here. I don't think I'm going to take too much more on here. I wanted to keep this, I don't know, fairly light and airy. Alright, so... I'm usually used to going in and adding a little bit more of a value, going into a darker tone, which I'll do, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that with the inks here, or if I'll do that with the colored pencil, or what. Okay, so here's some London fog. I'm going to use this on some of these rocks right here. Alright, now where do you do that? Okay, I'm just adding it in some of those darker areas of the rocks, okay? So if you see some shadows in here where it's a little bit darker, and also where you've applied some of that tone already, okay? I'll just go in here and add a little bit more. Like, for you, I don't know if you can even see what I'm doing right here. Well, that one got a little bit darker, but, I mean, I could barely see it because this gray isn't too much darker than the colors I've already added in there, but yeah, a little bit. Let's see, let's create a little bit of a separation between this rock and the ocean. So I've made it a little bit darker there. Okay? So you don't always have to, I mean, you can reference nature, certainly, okay? But don't overthink these types of things, okay? So say, if you have lighting right there, lighting for your cards is not saying something like, okay, there's a light here, wait a minute, would that rock be lighter or darker? You don't have to think that way. All I'm doing is, I see this overlook right here, and I want to create separation, okay? So I can make this area darker right here, just so it separates it from the ocean. The ocean and the sky is right there, so all I did was I created, and I made the ocean a little bit darker to separate surface from sky. So it's thing like checkerboarding. I bring that up all the time. But see this rock right here? Okay, let's make this go from dark light, dark light, dark light type of thing. Okay, so I'm just making these rocks a little bit darker like this. Okay. All right. So see, this is going from dark to light to dark right here. And we have light right here. Let's push this a little bit more in terms of that oscillation between light and dark, so I'm just making this area darker right here, okay? And what that does is it just creates this oscillation so that you have what you call visual variety. So see, instead of having all these rocks one value, okay? Oftentimes people are thinking of color. I'm making those rocks, let me see, rocks are gray, or whatever. If you're in Arizona, they're Utah red rocks or whatever, you know? But don't think about it like that only, okay? I tend to look at my pieces, I do think about hue, color, but I'm really thinking more like light and dark, okay? So on something like these rocks right here, we have this light and dark area in here. And what that does is it makes it look more three-dimensional. We have lights and darks in the water, so that makes it look more distant in terms of light falling on it. If you have all of this all blue in here, what it does is it really flattens it out and it makes it look, I don't know, kind of a little bit more two-dimensional that way. So I try to do that in all of my designs too. In all of my designs, they're inherently light and dark within the structure of them. I try to keep out all outlines as much as possible because that also kind of creates a flattening effect. There are flat designs that are outlines, and I do like a lot of them, but it's going against kind of a distant type of depth and the illusion of that depth. Okay, so adding in some more of this gray. See, I brought some of this blue down into here. Now I'm bringing some of the gray up into here. Okay? It doesn't read as gray. It's not like, oh my god, you just made the sky gray or something like that. It's just more of a little bit more value change. It just looks like a slightly darker tone there now. Okay, hitting some of this down in the water, right around the shadow areas. Like I said, it's just very, very minimal in terms of the influence in terms of light and darks right here. Okay, so that is that. Now I want to give this a little bit more color without going overboard, okay? So I don't have like a super pale pink. I used to. They used to have inherently Ranger had their Adirondack lights, okay, and they were really pale versions of whatever hue they depicted. This is a rose pink here, Marvy, which is super bright, okay? But the way you take a very bright color and make it duller and lighter is just wipe some of it off. I don't want that color there, okay? Or in the scene. So, you just dry it out. Dry it out a little bit more than you think you should. Or a lot more than you think you should, okay? So see that color right here? That's what I'm going for. Now, if I start applying it down there, I can't see anything, it's just way too light, then, you can always re-ink it. That's better than going in here and just adding way too much. Okay, now I'm also doing a very light touch with my hand here. I just touch it down and I'm just kind of dragging it across. And I'm not really pressing down, okay? But see, this is how it's kind of getting that hue through repetition. See that? It's like barely showing, and that's a far cry from that. Okay, so you can just kind of keep dragging it in. You can get it through repetition, the eventual value that you want from that color. Just something like that. Doesn't that look like a nice kind of horizon tone? And then I'll bring some of it into my water as well. That whole thing between continuity and creating relationships. Well, this is supposed to be kind of a colored light in the sky. And that same color is being reflected on the water. And why don't we add a little bit of that reflective light on my rocks, okay? This one time I can barely see anything being applied because it is so dry on here. It's just a tiny little hint of some color. Alright, so there we go. We didn't even need our Adirondack lights, okay? I still have them, I just don't use them. I try to avoid using, a lot of media that just people can't get anymore. Okay, I think it's time for our, figures in here. Now my figure is going to be stamped in front of this fence right here, so I'm going to have to darken in that fence and do some things because I'm adding her, and I don't feel like masking out those, those rungs in the fence, so Okay, now with this boat, I'm deciding if I want to go with the dye-based ink or if I want to stamp it in like a, I don't know, a VersaFine Clair or the Brilliance Graphite Black, which would dry very, very quickly. Let's just go with the dye-based inks for right now. Okay, let's see. This is my tiny little sailboat from a set. And let's go right around here. I don't want to stamp it right against the island because it would be black against black and I wouldn't be able to see it, okay? Yeah, look, that looks pretty good. You can even do a couple of them if you want to. Isn't that fun? It really gives kind of the feeling of distance by adding that in there now, like that. And our lady with coffee, I think this is having people looking into scenes is oftentimes very fun to do. All right, now if I stamp her right against a post, I'm not going to be able to see her very well, so she's going to have to be kind of in between these posts here. And also I want that coffee to be showing, so I'll stamp her out of it. I can put her out here. Now, if I put her over here, then her head's going to be on these fences here. So I think right here is a pretty good spot for her. Okay. She almost looks like she's standing on the fence there and kind of looking over. Actually, like, kind of looks, that works. I don't know if I'm going to go with that look though, but yeah, we'll see. I'll put it behind the fence. Okay, so let's see here. I'll hold this up and I'll see what she looks like there. That looks a great place for a morning or evening coffee, or during coffee, maybe it's some hot chocolate, or maybe it's some tea. Okay, let's start using some colored pencils in here. Now again, this is the silk, white-coated silk paper, so it takes the colored pencils just fine. Okay, so here's some different colored pencils that I think would work really well with this scene. I'm going to go with some brown and brownish tinges. Here's some burnt umber, and here's some raw umber. Blues right here. I can give her some sort of a color in her jacket. Maybe, how about something like red, you know, we're joking about it before. Carmine red, you know, for her shirt, like that. Something of that sort. And then, of course, I have black, so I'll deepen some of my shadows with that. Okay, so I don't know. I'm just trying to decide on which one of these I want to go with first. Okay, now, I am no colored pencil artist, okay, but what I'm doing here is I'm just going in and just lightly adding some tone to some of these rocks, and I'm doing it in the shadow areas. So if there's some darker areas of the rocks, I'm reiterating it with this, okay? In other words, I'm darkening my shadows, okay? And if there's some areas that are lighter, I'll largely stay away from it, but the thing about colored pencils is you can do whatever value you want just by, you know, the amount of pressure and amount of times you go over those areas. Okay, and here's something else on the fence posts. I can kind of create some shadows, you know, coming away from that horizon like this. The shadows will really be developed more with black, okay? But, you know, you can start establishing a little bit with, you know, your lighter tones, okay? And when you're doing it with the lighter tones like this, you can even see if you like it. If you don't like it, then, you know, don't do it with the darker tone. You know, just kind of work it out with the, you know, the lighter one first. and then just add more accordingly. If you don't like something with a really, really light application of color, it's no big deal. You can't even hardly, see it. Just kind of establishing a little bit of a shadow at the base of my sailboat there, and the islands here, like this. Now, like I said, this is a coated paper, so, it's taking my first layer of colored pencil very easily. I don't think we're sacrificing anything by having a smoother paper. It's if you really want to build up layers over layers of layers of colored pencil, using a paper that's more conducive for that. Something with a lot more tooth and texture is better for that, but, for a couple layers, it's not bad at all using colored pencils on this paper. Glossy, it's a little bit tougher. Maybe you can go with like one layer or something like that. Okay, so here's some of this fencing. Maybe I'll use some of these umbers on it, like so. I'll add a little bit of highlighting to these later on too. Okay, how about some of the umbers on some of these rocks too? So I'm just going with a really light touch. I almost went a little bit too hard over there, but remember you can blend these out a little bit too. The biggest thing is just to, just go with a much lighter touch at first, just to get kind of the feel of it. Let's go with this one right here, blue violet, Ooh, this one's pretty dark, so I'll hit it in my shadow areas very conservatively at first because it is quite dark. It's also how dark is that going to look over what you've already applied down there, so that's the question. I'm hitting some of my areas down here in my waves, okay, underneath the crest of the wave. These would be the areas that we're surfing, if we were surfing. Okay, here's some of this little blue in the shadows. I don't want to make blue shadows, but, you can add a little bit of cool, darker tinge in these areas. So now everything starts to get, little by little, it gets a little bit more resolved, and I think more full looking. Here's a little bit of this shadow again being cast. Kind of putting, and again, this is a smooth paper, coated paper, so kind of putting wax on wax. Colored pencil on colored pencil, it doesn't stick that well, but, that's fine with me. It doesn't have to stick too much. Because this isn't like a colored pencil scene, and, it's kind of a mishmash here. All right, kind of giving her a little bit of a reddish jacket or something like that. How about a little bit of green in this kind of grassy area up top here? I'll put a little bit of warmer green in the grasses where it's a little bit lighter, kind of on that far end of the overlook here, maybe. There, that looks pretty good. I think that little bit of a warmer green kind of livens it up a little bit. Yeah. You can do other things too. I'm adding colored pencil in here. You can hit it with some alcohol markers if you want to. Yeah, I'm going with a much lighter yellow-green-ish color. So those little pops of kind of a brighter tinge in there. So that really kind of adds to that look. Remember kind of adding a light colored pencil over a darker area. I'm not adding such a thick application of this pencil that, you know, using light over dark is going to make it look lighter in those areas. It's just kind of warming it up a little bit. All right. And let's see, here's this umber. I didn't use this umber. Let's put a little bit of kind of more of a dirt area up top here like this. Let's add some of this into these rocks. What color is this? Raw umber. When you're a freshman in art school, there's a lot of things that you need for the beginning painting and beginning drawing classes, beginning figure drawing, beginning, you know, design. By the time you get to be a senior, it's like, okay, let's see, I already have that color, that color, that color, that paint, that paint, and that paint, luckily. But it's the most expensive when you're kind of in those lower division classes because you don't have anything. Portfolios, you know, cases, you know, your art supply chest, you know, that you have to haul up to, you know, campus every day. Alright, coming around, see these rocks right here? Yeah. See how colorful they look? I mean, it's kind of an understated color. They're not super bright, but I don't know. I didn't used to use a lot of colored pencil. I've had these colored pencils. I don't know, I think since I was a student, but I barely used them in scenes over the years. First of all, I was using a lot of glossy cardstock over the years, just because you can get more impact using that. You know, that's what they print movie posters on, and book covers, and business cards, etc., etc. And it's for a reason, you know. It's because it has the most amount of impact, because your media is staying a lot more surface-oriented, okay? So I like to, you know, have the potential to maximize my colors and everything like that more, but I don't know, there is something to be said for kind of, you know, playing around with different media and whatnot. So I find that the silk one is a pretty good kind of intermediate type of surface here, because you get that benefit of the retention of media on the surface, but you get the, I mean, this is really smooth, but it's just not quite as smooth as like a glossy. It's not slick. So you can use, you know, colored pencils on it very easily. Or I haven't tried things like charcoal on it, but you can probably do it with some, you know, some effect, especially if you're using like a workable fixative, you know, to do layering on here. Okay, now let's see. Let's go into this fence and kind of put her behind the fence. So I'm kind of darkening in some of these fence pieces here. Okay. I'm going to give her a bit of a shadow too. I don't want to create too dark of a shadow though. Okay. All right, now again, I'm using black, so I'm going into those darker areas on my rocks. Okay. And just deepening some of the shadows. Don't go in too fast, kind of build it up, you know. Use a very light, I don't know, like a 10% gray. And then just the more you go over it with that, the darker it gets. And you have a lot of control when you're working, you know, from a very light application like that. Nothing has to be kind of precarious in terms of your application process if you take it kind of in a smoother, not smoother, but a slower application. So go like something like that. See, if I go like this, and if there's something I don't like about it, it's like a 5% gray. But if I go like that, you know, you have to have a little bit more control over it if you're doing it, you know, with such force. Okay. All right. I haven't used colored pencils in a while. This is really fun. It's like I'm watching this whole thing kind of come together. It's like I'm focusing on little areas like this that I'm doing, but then every now and then I'm kind of taking a look at it overall and watching it come together that way. So that's kind of an important thing too, is just to you know, hold your pieces at an arm's distance, and that, you know, to get, you know, a good idea of how things are looking like in the overall, in addition to, you know, your specific areas. Okay, here's how I'm doing a little bit of shadows. I'm doing little nicks from going from the these posts like that. Over here, I'm kind of going up and then bringing it back like that. All right, so I think that is that. I'm not sure how much those clouds are going to add to that area in there. I'm just starting to wonder if I even need it. I think this would be a great place for a quote up here. But let's, you know, I mean, that was one of the things I was thinking about doing on here. Let's go with, let's say we can add a little bit of a cloud touch in here. I think I'm going to have to go pretty delicate in here, so I'm not going to go with anything too harsh. Okay. Well, I don't know if harsh is the word. Too distinct. Okay. All right. Does anyone have cloud templates? Now you have 10 of them. You know, it's right in your, you know, whatever, your kitchen cabinet in the form of a roll of paper towels. Okay. All right. So I'm going to add in some clouds like this in here. Okay. And let's do that with some, I'm going to go with the brilliance here. I believe you could probably use whatever your hues, you know, unicorn or regular pigmenting, especially if you're doing it on like a matte style of paper, or in this case, the white coated silk should be fine. Okay, so I'm adding this in like so. And it's not very thick though, okay? It's just very little of that application. And I'm also doing it in a very light area because I didn't go too dark in here. I mean, if I'm doing this on dark foil, this really stands out. But it's against a very light area here, so I can barely see it, okay? Where you start seeing it is where dark meets light, okay? Or you can say it, or maybe more accurately, it's where light meets dark, okay? So I'm starting in the lighter area, and then I'm working out into this darker area. By darker areas, I mean that blue sky up there isn't dark, but it's just darker, okay? it in like so. it barely shows, okay? Maybe that's good. I'm just getting a little bit of texture here. Let's go up a little bit higher, and I'll do it in these darker areas. I'm adding in more white pigmenting to my application too, just because it is so subtle. I think it looks pretty good. Is it needed? No. Is it kind of a subtle enhancement? I guess it is. It's almost invisible, but I can see it. It's kind of an interesting look because it's very, I mean, it's apparent. And now, when this dries, I don't know if I'll be able to see it, but see this, like this area right in here. See, like over here. I mean, I'll push it a little bit more so we can see it a little bit more. I'll push it with kind of a thicker application of ink here. Yeah, okay. There we go. I'm really kind of globbing it on. Don't do that if you went a lot darker than me. Mine's very light, though. Yeah, okay, I think that looks good. See that right there? Yeah, that looks a lot better now that I think about it. So instead of just this area in here. Okay, so the red paper towel's on this type of application of ink. I think that looks really good. Having that there too, you know, if you get kind of an application of that streaking that you don't like, just put these clouds over it. It's kind of remedying some of my kind of weaker areas in here, you know, where it was kind of real, kind of harsh, you know, where I didn't really kind of layer it very smoothly. See, I know the things that I can kind of do. Well, this is the first time I've done this, but I could have added the cloud cumulus in here. Adding white pigmenting to it, just those types of things tend to remedy a lot of things that could be potentially seen as problematic while they're being done. So that's why a lot of people sometimes people stop doing what they're doing. That's like, oh my god, this is looking horrible. I never do that because I just know that there's a lot of things that I could still do to remedy those types of things that we might not like during the process in which they're being applied. Okay, that looks fun like that. Look at that sky. Looks so much better. This is a big area up here in my sky too that, you know, is kind of blank, you know, to fill in. So I don't know with those clouds. I was thinking this is a perfect spot for a quote, and I still might do it, but I don't know if that needs it anymore. Okay. Now, you might get, me too, I might apply this pigment ink in here and get kind of what I'm going after while this ink looks wet, okay? But this ink dries and it becomes much more see-through, okay? So you might have to go in and add more layers as it dries, okay? I don't know why it just, dark pigment inks to me look lighter when they dry, and light pigment inks, if you're putting them over a darker area, look darker when they dry. Okay, so those clouds are up there. Let's add a little bit of a kind of atmosphere to this area down below in the form of some kind of fog. Maybe a Q-tip would be better for this, but I'll just try this cotton ball. I'm kind of being careful around that sailboat because I don't know if it's still slightly moist from stamping out that impression. It's been a while, but I think my black pad is pretty juicy still. I don't remember even when I re-inked it. Okay, I'm adding some of this little foggy type of atmosphere to the my nearer crashing waves. Okay, and let's put a little bit of a backlighting on this island up here. Okay. So look at this. See what I did on those islands? See how much more... Don't they look more dimensional that way? They look very crisp, but if you just kind of lighten up little areas of them, they just look so much more dimensional, and to me they feel like they're set into that scene more by doing that. And then you can see those clouds up top there. All right. I used to putting kind of this foggy type of thing around everything, but you know, in this case up here, I don't think that would be good to bring this fog up here because it's I guess it just matters on how something looks, but in this case, I don't want to do that. But see this backlit this fence up here against that sky? Let's change that fence and let's see. I think we can get the same benefit from some of this fencing being a little bit lighter as we did on those islands. Okay, so I put a little bit too much, so I'm just kind of wiping some of it off. I'm dabbing some of it off here. So here's those little subtle things that I think can make a big difference, cumulative. You see this fence right here, how dark it is? But then see I put a little bit of that white pigment ink over this area. And you can see it's darker up here, but where it's in that lighter area. And then when you look at it like this, I don't know, that seems more distant to me. And I don't know, the whole piece seems like it's kind of bathed in light because certain objects have that lighting on them like that. Okay? But again, it's not like shadows everywhere. It's not like the same pigment ink is everywhere. You just apply it here and there on certain objects. And it really doesn't matter what you do either, okay? It's not like, you don't have to think about, let me see, which one should I do? Just do it on some and not on others, okay? Or on some parts of some and not on others. And which ones you choose, it doesn't really matter, okay? Just as long as there's kind of a variation of it. And if you're not certain after all that, what you do is you just apply a little bit on something and then hold it out and see if you like it. And if you don't like it, just wipe it off or just don't add anymore. Yeah. And you'll be fine. If you add barely any media to something, as far as a test goes, it's not making a big commitment to the visual application of it. You can't see it. All right, so that was a lot of lighting and shade. Now this is a white paint pen, acrylic paint pen. And let's bring out a lot more detail now, okay? With this. This is what kind of brings something to life. It's very sparkly and bright. Okay. All right, we have it down here in the water. Okay. I'm doing some kind of lines and some little dots. You do little splashes around in here if you want to. Let's do that. Okay, see that right down in there. It's taking my camera a little while to focus in. See those little splashes down there? Okay, now this rock area right in here. Watch on here. I'll see on the, there's like, this is the ledge stamped down in here, and it's stamped on it sideways, okay, but on the, these would normally be the top surfaces of the rocks. I'm just putting a few little dots in here, okay? And that makes them seem more three-dimensional, just like shading does in the darker areas. Kind of a little highlight in the lighter areas reiterates that idea of lighting, okay? So I won't do too much right here, but see these little specks of light in here, and then this is what it looks like at arm's distance. Not like, oh my god, this is crawling with a little bunch of little white dots or anything like that. Nothing like that. But I don't know, it all contributes to the overall kind of sensibility, lighting sensibility here. Okay, now I'm adding in some of these highlights in here, and this will especially help with the lady kind of standing behind it. If I put the highlights on these fence posts like this, it really separates the fence in terms of being closer to us than the figure. Okay, again, because I didn't do any kind of masking or anything like that. If you just add these in afterwards, you don't have to mask. I don't know if I needed to do this, but I think it looks better. I love adding the highlighting on these fences anyways. Okay, so let's see what that looks like here. See these? What I meant right here is if I see that lady kind of was stamped right against this fence, but I added this white highlight right in here, and now it pushes her behind the fence. You know, just with the use of that highlighting, okay? And that's what it looks like there in terms of our lighting and whatnot. Okay. Let's see. Let's do a little some little bit of detailing right in here. I'm going to add a little pop of color in here. Okay. Let's go with an orange. It's like poppies or something like that, growing against kind of the perimeter of the fence at the base, maybe. It's like some flowers. And I kind of cluster this as opposed to doing a bunch everywhere, kind of evenly spread out. Some of these I don't think I've even used before yet. Just put a little bit of a duller, I don't know, kind of tan amongst the real bright, you know, orange, just to add a little bit of variation. Now you see, you can't really see anything right here with that orange. Maybe you can see a hint of it, but as I get closer, see those little orange little dots around right in here. See how nice that kind of looks? But then overall, you know, when someone gets a card like this, you know, it's not like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of little orange dots or something, but look at those little white areas in there. That really helped it, didn't it? And again, here's that area up in the sky. I think that really kind of enhanced that area. It's very subtle, but I really like it. All right, so we can incorporate some further kind of use of our, you know, our very high-tech masks, right? you know, in our just regular scenes. Regular, I'm talking about non-foils or dark surfaces or something like that. So you add some colors in the background, add these clouds over the top of it like so. And I think it can enhance it very nicely. Okay, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed this piece right this. I've been thinking about ways to finish this off for a while now, and I've wanted to get around to it. I want to do this composition again, like maybe like a moonrise or something like this, because I really like this cliff. You can even have opposing cliffs or something like that. You can have a overlook over here, like say you're doing like a slimline card or something like that. It'd be interesting to have another one of these on the other side. Maybe you can have people looking at each other or something like that, or looking down at something down here, and it might be kind of interesting as kind of a really significant visual lead-in. If you do that, I would have this like this, but maybe on the opposing side, I'd have it kind of coming into the scene a little bit more, just so it doesn't look too kind of symmetrical and redundant and mirrored, I guess you could say. Okay, so anyways, hope you enjoyed it again, and thanks so much for watching Stampscaping 101.